Two climbers, 2 days, same expedition company, both died in Everest's death zone, one descending from the summit, a place where your chances of survival depend entirely on preparation, experience, and the people you trust to get you home. The problem is that some of these high altitude guides are very inexperienced, quite young, and do not have the backup support from these very small expedition companies operating on a very, very slim budget. And some of these expedition companies are leading clients to their deaths. This is the dark truth about commercial operations on Mount Everest in the Nepal side. When things go wrong, some expedition operators don't have the manpower, the experience, or even in some cases, the ability to help even if they wanted to. It's happening already this season, and now almost 1,000 climbers are about to make their way up for the main summit push to the summit of Mount Everest on the Nepal side. Today we'll talk about what's going on Mount Everest, some of the ups and downs, and some of the tragedies that have taken place there. At this point in time, 4 people have lost their lives recently, 2 of them around some somewhat mysterious circumstances, having died at base camp. There's very little information being shared about the circumstances around their deaths. They were flown to Kathmandu, where they died of acute mountain sickness or probably pulmonary or cerebral edema, which can happen when somebody climbs too fast into higher altitudes. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, and we'll also talk about some of the really good and uplifting stories. One, a climber who swam across the English Channel first and then biked and ran over 12,000 kilometers before summiting early in May, and a team of military elite looking to climb Everest in 1 week using the controversial Xenon gas that will be taking place on the north side, the Tibetan side of the mountain. As reported in Explorer's Web by Angela Benavides, waves of climbers have been moving up from base camp, and some were able to grab early successes on Mount Everest, despite the fact that the weather windows are very small. The forecast, short term at least, is for high winds. In a report posted by Ben Ayers of Everest.Live, he had a message from Adrian Ballinger of Alpenglow Expeditions, who talked very briefly about his discomfort with these short weather windows, and he is opting to wait it out and go a little bit later, in the mid-20s, as he said. Let's cut to a very short clip from that, this being from Everest.Live, which I will link in the description below. If you haven't followed it or subscribed to it, you absolutely should, as they are posting multiple times daily throughout this Everest season.
You're going to be hearing a lot over the next few days about people summiting. The current summit windows, to me, are really high risk. They show small periods of low wind, but with the jet stream sitting directly on top of us, so just to the south, which means the tiniest change in the atmosphere, the winds can jump from 20, 30 miles an hour up to 80. And I'm really, honestly, pretty concerned about this next window. I'm excited we're skipping it. We have a lot of hope for a good long window where the jet stream is actually gone in the mid-20s in May. So
the first climbing death took place just recently on Mount Everest at Camp 4. A climber from the Philippines, Philip Santiago II, he died at Camp 4 after arriving to Camp 4 very, very late, completely exhausted, and essentially fell asleep and did not wake back up. The expedition outfitter was Snowy Horizon Treks, who had also lost a climber on Alma de Blanc about a week ago. And then within 24 hours of the loss of Santiago II, another climber from West Bengal, India, from that same expedition operator, Snowy Horizon Treks, also died. He was coming down from the summit, And his young Sherpa tried everything in his power to try to get this man to move. Unfortunately, he was unsuccessful. It sounds like the efforts on the part of the high altitude guide were valiant and beyond the call of duty. I was able to get Ben Ayers himself ever so briefly for a short couple of minutes at base camp today as I'm recording this video, who told me the circumstances about Palchen Tamang, the high altitude guide that was with Ghosh. And I want Ben to tell you before his camera broke off, it was just a very short interview clip, quite dramatic, and it's much better to hear it from Ben than second or third hand from me. So let's cut to that short interview with Ben Ayers from base camp on Everest.
The case from this morning is much more sad. Gentleman from West Bengal reached the summit with his climbing Sherpa at about between 2 and 3 a.m., according to the managing director of the company, and he refused to go down. You can just assume that that's a case of exhaustion, but when people become hypoxic, you never know. The Sherpa, his climbing Sherpa, cajoled and dragged and moved him down through the night to the Hillary Step, where the gentleman sat down and refused to proceed any further, and the Sherpa basically spent the remainder of the night there with him until he passed away. At that point, things were quite critical for the Sherpa as well. With the help of some other individuals in the area on the mountain, they got him safely down to Camp 4, thank God. That story, the interesting thing about this story, Tom, is that both of those fatalities were both working with the same outfitter, Snowy Horizon Tracks. I'm not trying to draw a conclusion between the outfitter and the accident. They were part of the same expedition. They happened at the same time. But it's just certainly a really sad story for everyone. And I guess we had hoped, as we do every year, that you'd get away without having to tell that kind of thing.
There have been also some dramatic long line rescues of climbers who have fallen ill high up the mountain from Camp 3, which is up the Lhotse face, a perilous place to be for a helicopter to actually attempt a rescue of a climber. And you can see this footage of a long line rescue. The climber at the bottom of this long line is indeed alive. Apparently the helicopter, the slope below the helicopter was so steep that they lowered a line. The climber was able to clip into that, and then they lowered him down to where a team of doctors, Himalayan Rescue Association, essentially Everest ER, a medical camp that is stationed at Mount Everest and has been for some years now, where that climber was treated and released and is expected to have a full recovery from pulmonary edema. These rescues of the climbers has saved what almost guaranteed would have been 2 additional deaths on the mountain. It shows you that as the ability of helicopters and more experienced helicopters willing to take these flights could be critical in saving many lives in the future of Mount Everest. The plain fact is that the main summit push is about to take place. There are hundreds of climbers mobilizing up the mountain to be ready for that short weather window, which, as you heard Adrian Ballinger say, it's too short for his comfort. Now, Adrian Ballinger, they're operating expeditions on the north side of the mountain in Tibet, where there are far fewer climbers, only 70 some odd clients and maybe 100 plus Sherpa and high altitude guides. So the experience on the north side is much quieter, and also the Chinese Tibetan Mountaineering Association, they have much stricter regulations as to who is given a permit. You have to prove prior experience of a 7,000 meter peak or even an 8,000 meter peak. And the expedition operators who work there have to be cleared through the government. It's quite the opposite on the Nepal side. There are currently 44 expedition operators working on the mountain, and many of them are very small and very, very reputable. And how these very small expedition operators sometimes will work is they might have literally one client, a one-on-one situation with a couple of Sherpas on that team, and they will embed themselves inside bigger expedition outfitters such as Climbing the Seven Summits or Madison Mountaineering or Seven Summits Treks, where Ben Ayers is currently embedded as the Everest.Live reporter and journalist. So it's not that these are all sketchy. On the contrary, these are not necessarily sketchy organizations, but some of them are indeed, I guess you could say, exploiting the clientele who are unaware of the risks associated with going with a very, very low budget expedition operator. This is a big issue on Mount Everest, and it has continued to repeat itself year after year after year. Many of the climbers who die on these high altitude climbs are unprepared, have very inexperienced or very young high altitude porters or Sherpa with them who have neither the physical strength or the experience to turn these people around before they run out of gas, so to speak, literally oxygen, but also become completely exhausted, unable to even get themselves down the mountain by crawling. I believe that the government of Nepal should more carefully regulate the expedition operators that are working on the mountain. And now let's flip over into the United States in Denali National Park. When climbers go to climb that mountain, they are required to watch a film that shows about the perils of climbing that mountain. They can't stop anybody from doing it. It's a national park in the United States, but they need to know and show those people that you are in peril the minute you step on that mountain, starting at the Khumbu Icefall, which is ostensibly the most dangerous part of the mountain outside of the high altitude area of the death zone. One of the pick-me-up and well-publicized stories is of the Brit Mitch Hutchcraft. He's a military veteran from Great Britain, and he swam across the English Channel and then rode his bike and ran the remaining 12,000 plus kilometers to get to Mount Everest, and then he just climbed it successfully. He's down now. His team is calling it the longest ever ascent of Mount Everest, but as Angela Benavides reported, while the team has said that it's the longest ever climb of Mount Everest, they refer to the late Goran Kropp's feat, which was very hard to match. He cycled from Stockholm to Everest Base Camp carrying his own supplies and gear, which was 108 kilograms, and then he climbed Everest without oxygen and then cycled part of the way back home. On the north side, something that I've reported about and did an entire live stream devoted to it was the story of the Xenon gas climbing teams that Lucas Furtenbach is leading this year in Tibet, including a team of climbers that are calling themselves Mission Everest. And their PR marketing stuff is dark. I mean, it looks as there's something out of Terminator 2 or something like that. And the goal of this team, with the use of xenon gas guided by Lucas Furtenbach, is to go door to door from their home in England to Mount Everest, and then climb the mountain, go all the way back home, 7 days round trip, having used the xenon gas. In sanctioned sports, it would be an illegal drug to use because it would be cheating. But on Everest, I guess there's no cheating. Oxygen is considered a drug in the medical field. So other than the 200 climbers plus who have climbed it without oxygen, everybody cheats to get to the top of the mountain. So these guys will be apparently leaving on the weekend, and we wish them all the safety and the best. but it's an untried realm, this xenon gas thing. They've tested it on Aconcagua and some other mountains around the world, but it remains to be seen whether, if, let's say, somebody gets stuck in a storm or there's a delay in the death zone, if that will lead to problems. Taking these xenon gas treatments, which reportedly cost $5,000 per treatment, just a short 30 minutes of breathing it in, it builds up your EPO, and it essentially replaces your need for the long acclimatization that a regular climber would need on the mountain. And they've also been sleeping in what are like high altitude tents in their homes at night, so it replicates higher altitude as they sleep. So they should get there fully acclimatized. It'll be fascinating to find out how they do, and it could change the trajectory for people who have the bank book, who have the ability to pay a ton of money. Apparently this trip is costing each of them around 150,000 American dollars each, whatever the conversions are from British pounds or the euro. A lot of money, and quite the flip side, the antithesis of the gentlemen who lost their lives on these lower budget expeditions with completely inexperienced expedition operators. As a fun sidebar, I thought it would be really interesting to see the results of a poll. There are more than 1,300 votes on this, and the question is, you're in base camp, a summit window is coming in the next few days, and it's uncertain how many chances you'll get to go for that summit, which you've dreamed of for many years, with 1,000 clients and high altitude guides and Sherpa all waiting their turn. You know that going early could mean bottlenecks and traffic jams, but waiting might mean missing your chances altogether. What would you do? And I found this absolutely fascinating. The 46% of the answers were, I wouldn't be there in the first place, which I find awesome, because at least 46% of the people had the common sense not to even bother, right? I say that facetiously. I love everything about Mount Everest. 34% said, I'd trust my guide or leader to make the right choice. 15% wait for the crowds to thin and risk missing a chance. And then only 6% said go first, get ahead, even if it would be a risk of a traffic jam. Pretty fascinating. Make sure you go to that poll if you haven't participated. I'll put the link to that poll in, and we'd love to see your comments. There's some amazing things that people say about these questions, and it's probably one of my favorite things about Everest Mystery are putting these poll questions up. Thousands and thousands of people weigh in, and that's why I hope that if you haven't done so already, you'll subscribe to the channel so you will be notified when a poll question is posted. These polls are a great place for conversation and seeing what some of the other people think about these questions and ethics on Mount Everest and beyond. So make sure you hit subscribe and consider joining membership. There are a ton of videos of exclusive content that you can only get if you become a member. I find it tragic that 2 Sherpa lost their lives at base camp. They were flown to Kathmandu with pulmonary edema, and the thing that it says to me, given that there's almost no information whatsoever out there, perhaps it's something for the Nepal Tourism Board, they don't want negative publicity about what's taking place on the mountain, but typically if somebody falls sick at base camp, it means that those people have gone very likely from Kathmandu straight to base camp and then took ill. Now, while these Sherpa are indeed unique and super strong individuals, most of those that we hear about live in the higher altitudes year-round, or at least most of the year. And those that live in Kathmandu, sometimes when the staff is short or they need more people to help for a small expedition operator, those Sherpa are flown to base camp. And sometimes it's the more fly-by-night, low-budget expedition operators that are making these tragic mistakes. And now these 2 Sherpa, their families are paying for it. And now there's no breadwinner home anymore. And it's an absolutely tragic story. But for now, nothing's going to change on the mountain. There are climbers making their way up the mountain on the south side. Hundreds upon hundreds, up to 1,000, will be endeavoring to climb to the summit in the next week or so, beginning just in a couple of days. And then on the north side, as I showed you earlier, Adrian Ballinger is choosing to wait it out for the mid-20s, saying that weather window is very, very tight, and the jet stream being very close to the summit, if it shifts just a little bit, could cause complete chaos on the mountain. Wishing everybody well here and at Mount Everest, the best of successes. I hope that you'll take a moment to leave your thoughts in the comments of this video, and also make sure you look for my upcoming live stream. It will be an exciting one, and I hope that you can make it. Thanks for being here. Do a good deed. Don't ask for anything in return. Make the world a better place, one tiny step at a time. Peace be with you.